Hi everyone, this is Learning with Linda, and today I bring you an update for the month of February regarding tax season for 2024. Now guys, in this video we do have some information regarding the PATH Act refund. There's actually been an update for those of you that claim the EITC or the Advanced Child Tax Credit. There's some important information in this video for you. Also, regarding the child tax credit, for those of you that have been wondering what has been going on with this bill, what is happening with it, well, unfortunately, guys, the bill has been stalled in the Senate, and I do have all those details in this video. Then also, as we've started the 2024 tax season, there's actually been some data that's been released where they're comparing the average tax refund for 2024 compared to last year. And for 2024, it seems like the average tax refund is of $1,395. We also have some information for taxpayers in the state of West Virginia and Maine that have been impacted by severe storms. They're pretty much going to have their tax deadlines postponed, or I should say rather pushed back. So make sure you guys stay until the end of this video to ensure that you receive this information. Now, before we get started, if you're interested in the latest news regarding stimulus, child tax credit, SNAP, PEBT, and everything in between, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below. Now let's get right to it. So let's start off with the PATH Act tax refund update. For those of you that claim the EITC, which would be the Earned Income Tax Credit, or the ACTC, which would be the Additional Child Tax Credit, right? So the PATH Act, which is protecting Americans against tax hikes, was passed in 2015 as a tax reform bill. Now, this bill had 50 tax credits and deductions and made permanent several popular tax credits. Now, however, one of the biggest impacts of the PATH Act was a delay that was required for certain tax returns to combat tax fraud. So it pretty much has people hold back in terms of their refunds, right? So most people claiming the EITC and ACT can expect an overall tax refund. However, the PATH Act stipulates that the IRS must withhold refunds for filers who claim these tax credits until February 15th. So before February 15th, pretty much the IRS cannot distribute these tax credits, right? Because that's what's stipulated in the law. Now, if you filed before February 15th, you're owed a tax refund and you're claiming either the ACT or the EITC, then your entire refund will be withheld until at least the February 15th deadline. Now, it also seems like the IRS website and their app, it's going to be updated for most filers by February 17th. And so they're pretty much going to be including expected refund dates for most early filers with the Earned Income Tax Credit or the Additional Child Tax Credit. Now, for 2024, the earliest PATH Act tax refunds could arrive as early as February 20th, right? As early as. But the majority of early filers will see their refund during the week of February 26th through March 1st. And of course, this is going to depend on when you have filed your tax return. Now, if you filed on paper and are expecting a refund, it could take a little longer. It could take up to 4 weeks or more time to process your return. Now, the IRS does expect most EITC/ACTC related refunds to be available in taxpayer bank accounts or on debit cards by February 27th. Now, this is only if the person chooses direct deposit, and of course, there's no other issues with their tax return. However, again, keep in mind that some taxpayers may see their refunds a few days earlier. Now, I did find this chart that I do believe is very helpful. Again, as I previously mentioned, between February 17th, maybe even February 18th, seems like the IRS is going to have information regarding expected refund dates for most early filers receiving the EITC or the ACTC, right? Then again, keep in mind that February 19th is pretty much a holiday. It would be President's Day, and so no refunds would be sent on that date. Now, by February 27th is when you can say that most PATH refunds are expected to be deposited. Now, keep in mind, again, that mailed refunds can take 4 to 6 weeks or even longer based on the mail system. And as always, remember that there's all this information available on the irs.gov website. Here, for example, I found this where it says, like, if you claim the Earned Income Tax Credit or the Additional Child Tax Credit, you can expect, again, to get your refund by February 27th. If, of course, when you filed your return online, you chose to get your refund by direct deposit, and then there was no other issues with your tax return. Now, the IRS has also recently released information regarding the filing season statistics for the week ending February 2nd of 2024. So keep in mind, guys, that this information pretty much reflects the first 5 days for the 2024 filing season. So basically, they're giving out information as to how many total returns were received, how many of them were processed, and then from here is where they're pulling out the amount of the average refund amount. And as you can see, and as I previously mentioned, for 2024, it seems it's of $1,395. But if you do compare that information to last year, it seems like last year, and within right around this date, actually, they had already sent out an average refund of $1,963. Now, here's another note that's important to take into account, and I do think the IRS here has stated pretty clearly. So because the 2023 filing season began on January 23rd, they did start a little earlier compared to 2024, by the way. The IRS had been receiving returns for 12 days by February 3rd compared to only 5 days for the 2024 filing season, which, by the way, opened on January 29th, right? Now, considering the loss of 7 days in this comparison, filing season statistics below show a strong start to filing season 2024 with all systems running well. So yes, it seems like the IRS is writing smaller refund checks on average at the start of this year's income tax filing season. This according to new numbers from the tax agency. Now, federal income tax refunds are averaging $1,395 so far. This according to the Internal Revenue Service numbers released on Friday on the filing season that started less than 2 weeks ago. Now, that's pretty much an almost 29% decrease in the size of the average refund over years, compared with the first batch of data on last year's income taxes. Now, as I mentioned previously, the IRS did begin processing tax returns a little later this year than it did last year. The filing season started January 29th compared with last year's January 23rd start, which means the IRS hadn't processed as many returns as it had at this point last year. So that's one of the reasons why the refund picture is not as grim as it might seem. Now, the IRS has received 15.3 million returns so far, a roughly 19% decrease compared with the first round of data last year. Now, as more returns come in, it's a good bet the average 2024 refund size will increase. Now, another reason is that the IRS can't let some refunds out the door until at least February 15th. And that's actually what we had talked about earlier in the video. Remember, guys, that it was pretty much by law that they had to hold the refunds for people who are claiming certain tax credits. And of course, that's also playing into the relatively lower averages released on Friday. Now let's talk about what's going on with the child tax credit. If you guys remember the last time we covered this topic, we had talked about how the bill had pretty much been passed in the House. Well, unfortunately, now it seems like this bill is running into GOP resistance in the Senate. So I did find here some information I want to provide you guys with today. Here's another article that's also saying that the bill has pretty much been stalled on Capitol Hill, which could make a very, very stressful tax season. So it's not very good news, but let's dive in all the details. So the lack of direction from Congress on a $78 billion tax package could complicate filing season for millions of taxpayers, with small business owners and low-income families with children bearing the brunt of the impact. So the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act of 2024 includes a trio of business deductions that could impact 33 million small businesses and, of course, an expansion of the child tax credit. Now, with the current filing season well underway, the legislation is stalled. Now, while the bill passed the U.S. House with an overwhelmingly bipartisan margin of 357 to 70 votes, it has been slow-walked in the Senate in the recent days, and eventual passage remains far from certain. Final consideration of the deal now is likely to be pushed back, unfortunately, to late February at the earliest. So if the bill passes, taxpayers claiming the child tax credit could get a bigger tax refund. But before getting a refund, many, of course, must decide whether to file an uncertain return or wait, of course, for more guidance. Now, the proposed legislation does not increase the child tax credit amount, but would temporarily bump up the limit to the refundable portion until 2025. So, for instance, a parent earning, let's say, $15,000 with 2 kids would get a refund of $3,600 instead of the $1,857. Now, as the bill stalled, the IRS told taxpayers to file their returns when ready instead of waiting for Congress. Now, the IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel said the agency would help amend filed returns to adhere to the new law. And so it seems like the earliest the tax bill is likely to be further considered would be the week of February 26th. And even then, it kind of remains unclear if Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer will move to consider the package as is or accede to the push for amendments. Now, here's the thing, guys. If the bill is open to changes, it would undoubtedly delay the process even further and could even kill the deal entirely. Now, the legislation pretty much needs 60 votes to pass in the Senate. However, a number of Republican senators are raising issues with the legislation and pushing for it to go through committee rather than be taken up directly on the Senate floor. Now, that process could delay a bill that will already be tough to pass in an election year. And so that's pretty much what's been going on with this bill that is pretty much, again, being stalled in the Senate. Given this information, I know some people were waiting to do their taxes, and they were planning to obviously claim the child tax credit. Given this information, there's a couple things you may want to reconsider, given that, remember, there's a deadline that is quickly approaching, which once again would be April 15th. So feel free to share in the comments section down below what your thoughts are on this bill. And in other important news, here's some additional information that has just been released by the IRS for both Maine and then also West Virginia, where taxpayers impacted by severe storms and flooding qualify for tax relief. At least in the state of Maine, various deadlines have been postponed to June 17th. But of course, I'm going to be providing you with all the areas that qualify for this. Here's the press release for West Virginia. This one says West Virginia taxpayers impacted by severe storms, flooding, landslides, and mudslides also qualify for tax relief. Again, various deadlines postponed to June 17th. And so on December 17th of 2023, the state of Maine has been affected by severe storms and flooding pretty much. And so the IRS is pretty much providing tax relief for individuals and businesses that have been affected by this weather, right? So taxpayers now have until June 17th to file various federal, individual, and business tax returns and make tax payments. Now, the IRS has offered relief to any area designated by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Currently, this includes the following areas. And you guys can see them here on the screen. Individuals and households that reside or have business in these localities qualify for tax relief. Again, you don't just have to live in the state of Maine. You also have to currently reside in any of these counties. Now, the current list of eligible localities is always available on the disaster relief page on the irs.gov website. Now, the same goes for West Virginia. The Internal Revenue Service today announced tax relief for individuals and businesses in part of West Virginia affected by severe storms, flooding, landslides, and mudslides that began on August 28th of 2023. Now, these taxpayers now have pretty much, again, until June 17th of 2024 to file various federal, individual, and business tax returns and, of course, make tax payments. Now, the IRS is offering relief to any area designated by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Now, currently, this includes Boone County, Calhoun, Clay, Harrison, and Kanawha counties. Individuals and households that reside or have business in these localities qualify for tax relief. Now, the same relief will be available to any other West Virginia localities added later to the disaster area. And that is all the updates that I have for today. Remember to turn on your notification button to know when I have uploaded a new video. See you guys next time.